All right, welcome back to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock. We're here with Corey Goode. And in this episode, we're going to get into one of the most sensitive secrets of the Cabal, that known as the personality metamorph program. This is an extremely important subject for everyone to understand because, well, I'll let him tell you the rest. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, we know in the public lexicon that there are people out there that some people call sociopaths, some people call them psychopaths. There is a myth that a psychopath is violent, but that's not always true, is it?
No.
So what are some of the characteristics of the sociopath that we would see just in everyday life? If you have a sociopath that's part of your life, what are some of the characteristics that that person might display?
Well, usually it's not going to be any shock or mystery to you. A complete lack of empathy for any type of emotional or physical pain that you're going through. That's a major sign. The way they behave towards animals and children is a good indicator. A lot of these people have learned to blend in pretty well. Sociopaths have learned to fake emotions or fake empathy. So some of them are not as easy for the average person to identify. Until you've spent time around them, a lot of them can be hard to identify.
Do you agree with the commonly held notion that these people tend to be glamorous and narcissistic, that they're kind of affable and personable, outgoing, extroverted?
Exactly, yes.
Give us an example of a nonviolent, everyday sociopath that would have those kind of characteristics.
It would be your basic con artist that would get what they want from their mark without using physical violence, using manipulation, but having no empathy or care about what their successful con will do to the people emotionally or financially.
Do you think that society is starting to become more aware that these people exist?
Yeah, well, it's been pretty obvious for some time, but with social media, the internet, the topic is pretty heavy out there. People know about, internet trolls. They know about, sociopaths and what they're doing to this world, usually from places of power.
I think it's interesting that the conventional statistics, in case you don't know watching the show, is that it's 4% of men, 2% of women. But when you get to sociopathic internet trolls, different studies I've seen range between 5 to 8% of all people on the internet are acting this way. Why do you think the internet is such a marvelous breeding ground for trolls and for sociopaths? What is it about it that they like so much?
Well, the illusion of anonymity. It's if someone, very few of these people would behave that way in front of the people they're chastising or attacking. Most of them, just don't have the guts, or are just couldn't deal with the consequences. So they feel empowered by the anonymity of the internet. And we've, of course, done an episode on the government troll centers that I've helped set up, where paid government trolls get online and cause all kinds of problems.
Well, we also have Stockholm Syndrome, right, where people that have been kidnapped in hostage situations end up agreeing with the philosophy of their kidnappers and thinking that it was a good thing, that they're participating in a good cause by being hostages.
Yes. These programs that get lumped under the MILAB umbrella, or you hear the MKUltra umbrella that people like to use, they don't realize that MKUltra was a program that developed a lot of techniques that were later used in a wide range, hundreds of other programs. So all of these other programs are not MKUltra, but MKUltra developed a lot of tactics that are used the people that run these types of programs in the screening process, when they bring these children in, they separate them out based on the test results. And for some of the programs, they require people that are sociopaths, and they identify them as young as possible. And the program we're talking about today, they also want people who are compulsive liars and also have intuitive empath abilities to where they can read people and manipulate people. And then they take these people and they put them in the program that I always heard referred to as the personality metamorph program. And they developed this personality metamorph program to be a program that would train these children over a period of time through their adolescence and into their young adulthood to be the best manipulators and infiltrators ever trained on this planet.
Mainstream psychology says that the two main characteristics of the sociopath are fearlessness and dominance. So they use the term fearless dominance. How do you think fearless dominance, how do you think this characteristic of not having fear and this characteristic of being dominant, how is that useful in a program like the personality metamorph?
The whole purpose of these assets is to manipulate people, control people, and infiltrate organizations, and not only that, have the people that they're manipulating and controlling develop a very strong bond with them, to where if they don't talk to them for a few months, they're wanting to talk to them. They want to spend time with them. It's very odd. One of the strangest things about it is that the people that were training these children, as they were getting into adolescence, were getting so good that the trainers could not control them. The kids were manipulating them, they could not totally handle them. So they brought in intuitive empaths to work behind glass and help them tell, they would wear earwig, help them tell when the subject that was going through the metamorph program was being deceptive or truthful or manipulating the person that was doing the training or debriefing with them. So they were very, very difficult to manage and control.
Why do you think these people are fearless? I mean, most people feel afraid about all kinds of things. How does a person actually get to this point where they don't have fear at all?
Well, a lot of times, some of these children have been put through incredibly horrific experiences to where they shut off their feelings and emotions. Some of them are born that way. They're born just for some reason, they don't have the right chemical balance, but for some reason, they do not have the normal emotional response to situations that we do.
Well, just to bolster what you're saying, let's take a look right now at an A and B shot, where the A shot, as you're seeing now, is a normal brain, and the B shot is the brain of a psychopath or sociopath. And what you're noticing as you look at this is that all of that greenish yellow color that's all over the brain of the normal person, that color is missing from the frontal lobes of the brain in the sociopath. So why do you think the frontal lobes are not showing any electrical activity in these people's brains?
Well, that's where a lot of these emotions and thought processes occur.
So their brain literally does not have any or very little electrical activity.
Electrochemical activity in that region.
So it's literally as if they've shut down a whole area of their brain.
Right, and that can happen through psychological trauma, or it can be a biochemical thing from birth.
So is that some kind of defense mechanism against further trauma, like the body adapts to the trauma so that you can just plow through it?
In the cases of people that had to disassociate so many times, this has happened in rape victims and other assault victims that have been repeat victims. They've disassociated to a point to where that part of the brain just shuts down and quits producing impulses. But that's just a certain portion.
Another thing that we hear about sociopaths when you read about it in pop psychology all the time is that they are invariably going to be thrill seekers. They're constantly in a fight against boredom, and they need adrenaline. They need thrills of danger to make them not feel bored.
That definitely was a problem with these metamorph children. They would fight among themselves. They would take crazy chances. I mean, just to set it up for you, one of the tests that some of them were put through, they would dress a young man up, make him look very, I guess, clean cut, put him in like a pink polo shirt, and some, blue jeans, and make him look real preppy, drop him off at the roughest biker bar in town, and leave him. And by the end of the night, he would leave riding a motorcycle with a lady on the back. The situations they would put these people in and how they would turn them around was just absolutely amazing. And
but what are we actually seeing this guy do when he goes into the bar? Obviously, if he goes in dressed like a prep, people are going to want to beat him up or kill him.
Right.
So how the heck does he get out of that situation?
Well, they call him a personality metamorph for a reason. They can size up a situation and totally change their personality, the way they talk, have a backstory, I mean, everything, very quickly. Come in and probably come in and say, I'm so glad to be here among my people. I got the wrong suitcase, whatever they have to do to socially engineer the situation. And they're very good at it. And these people they've used for infiltrating the military, intelligence, finances, all branches of government, every part of the economy with corporations, and within the very community that we work in right now, ufology.
Most people, when they lie, a good police officer can tell signs of lying. People will do the long blink while they're talking to you, or they'll start to fidget with their hands or something like that. Are these people able to lie and beat a polygraph or beat a typical person who's trained to detect lying?
Yes, they had to pull an intuitive empaths to be able to finish their training, their last 4 to 5 years of training, because they were so incredibly gifted at any type of lie detective technology that was had in the programs, which was quite sophisticated. And the people debriefing them would just, after a while, they realized, we can't trust what these people are telling us. They had a lot of problems, and they had to have a solution of bringing IEs in to try to help them, tell when these people were deceiving them in briefings, or briefings after training, briefings after these little spot missions to give them, to test their skills. And finally, they'll sit there with an earwig, and if you sense deception, or which was almost all the time, a tone would be sent to the person with the earwig, and the person would know to change his approach to the subject across the table that was in the program.
So when we hear the word metamorph, personality metamorph, why was that term chosen?
Because they can morph their personality to match any other clique or group that they're around, or even individual. I mean, there's the typical thing that everybody knows that salesmen do, con men do, emulate the person that you're trying to influence, you know, sit like them, you know, not do body language with them, do subliminal things. This is way beyond that. These people, their skills are way beyond that, because they are intuitive, they're reading the people, so they're drawing off of the information that they're pulling from the people intuitively, and all of the other things, reading body language and you know, microfacial expressions, you know, watching the eyes, to know exactly how to approach them, as well as immediately size them up before even talking to them, and know which accent to approach them with, or what backstory to approach them with, like that.
Do these people receive neuro-linguistic programming training?
They receive all kinds of training when it comes to counterintelligence, intelligence, all the different types of ways of manipulating people, and I mean, everything from the simple things of reading body language in the context of also marrying that with your intuitive feedback, as well as there's some electromagnetic enhancements and training that I've talked about in other episodes. That is more of the training that a lot of the rest of us used. In these programs, these people would use a wide variety of other technologies that other programs used, like information that would, or technology that would feed information directly to their neurology, sort of like an education. And also they would put them in virtual reality environments to train them in the skills they were trying to instill.
I can't help but feel like when you're describing personality metamorph, that you're describing politicians running in an election, and without getting into any specific names, there's fairly widespread knowledge about, you know, muckraking journalism, where these politicians will go into different cities and they are talking in the accent of the city that they're in. So how
those are old well-known tactics, but those are very small caveats compared to what these people are trained in.
Are politicians trained in the personality metamorph program, or is this not really their specialty?
There are personality metamorphs in politics, but not all of them are trained in the metamorph program. No. They are just, I would assume that most of them are people that the personality metamorph program wished they had gotten when they were younger, because they would be perfect candidates.
So you mentioned something really quite incendiary, which is that these people have been trained very thoroughly with advanced technology, and that they have infiltrated the UFO community.
Oh, absolutely.
Without getting into any names, because we don't want to, you know, attract that kind of karma and that kind of attacks from their fan bases, but what kinds of things might we see if this were happening?
Well, and it's not always getting in a limelight position. A lot of times they will become a friend of someone in a limelight position, or a friend of a friend in a limelight position, to get access without having the spotlight on them. Now,
what good does that do?
Well, they have access to the person that they are sent to be a handler for, and infiltrate their small little clique and put in a narrative or break up an organization, any number of directives that they're given. And that's just one small part. The ufology's been infiltrated since the beginning in the 50s by the intelligence organizations. But the personality metamorph program has been deemed one of the most successful infiltrating programs ever. And there was, I can't remember the name, but there was a Russian program, infiltration program, spy program, back in the 80s, I believe, that was known for being one of the best infiltrating programs. But this makes it look like child's play.
Was this part of the KGB?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had tossed out a term that I think we ought to double-click on for a moment. You said socially engineering.
Social engineering.
What is that?
That's a term that's often used in data security, personal security. People will call you up on the phone, pretend to be the bank, and you know, say, I need your bank account number real quick, and oh, what's your social? You know, that is a real quick of what social engineering is. In the context of the personality metamorph, social engineering is they come in and do the same thing on a much wider scale and detailed scale based on a personality profile they've developed on you in a very short period of time, a very specific, tailored approach to influence you.
So there's all these people out there saying that the Earth is flat, and they feel like they have very compelling evidence, and it's the biggest cover-up of all time. Have they been socially engineered by personality metamorphs in some cases, the people that are coming out with this and believe this to be true?
Personality metamorphs will hop on a bandwagon and definitely help promote it. That particular, I've heard a couple different people now say that particular narrative came directly from NASA, I believe. So I don't think that
Not meaning that it's true.
Not meaning that it's true, but no.
To thoroughly discredit people who are in the truth community.
Right.
By making them seem so ignorant that they're pre-Columbus era, where Columbus sailed around the earth and found new land, that they don't even believe that.
Right.
So it's like they've literally figured out a way to use this technology so much that they've made a total mockery of people to such an extent.
Right. And one of the main goals that the personality metamorphs and other infiltrators have done with the esoteric and UFO community is to try to fragment us as much as possible through inner fighting and strong belief system differences.
You're saying that public figures in the UFO community would get a handler. They're not aware that it's a handler.
No.
What do they think they have?
They think they have a new friend that is very charismatic, that gives them insight into themselves that they hadn't seen before, and has a wisdom about them that is unusual for their young age, and they want to spend time with them. Therefore, giving the metamorph access to them and their psyche.
You had mentioned to me in private conversation before that personality profiles are made of people. Psychological analysis that's extremely detailed. So if you don't mind, could you explain how the personality metamorphs use those and how are they created?
Well, the personality metamorphs they're not looking at a dossier of a personality profile. They're taught to size up a person and profile them on the spot, and with their intuitive abilities, and after they've been put through so many simulations and the technologies we talked about before, and then in real-world testing, they become very confident of their skills, and they're very accurate with their profiling.
In the case where psychological profiles are created on people, because you said that's one of the most important tools for an intelligence agent, what do they look for? What would be in a profile?
The baseline is personality types. You know, there are 16 main personality types. And when you have these personality types, you can then build off of that by gleaning information about what magazines they get, gleaning information about where they go on the internet, information, dipping into their medical records. You gather all this information. If they talk to a psychiatrist, you gain information to that, and then it's compiled by behavioral psychologists that do nothing but put together personality profiles.
Is it common for personality metamorphs to betray the people they're handling at some point?
Absolutely.
And how does that manifest?
Usually at the pinnacle of when they have the person in the palm of their hand, and if that is if their job is to destroy that person or discredit that person, they have that person. They get the target completely disarmed, to where they completely trust the metamorph. They may tell secrets that they normally wouldn't tell to this metamorph, and they'll be like, I don't know why I'm telling you this stuff. And so this metamorph now is getting more and more and more power over this other person, and the dynamics in the relationship are slowly changing. And once they reach a certain point, then the metamorph, can either drop some information, drop a bomb, or just step off the scale and let the target go through disillusionment and withdrawals from the personality metamorph, leaving their life.
So is the personality metamorph going to come across to someone as like the best friend that they've ever had because they have this technology?
People become addicted to these people's personalities and friendship. They become addicted to them.
Will the information that they give that metamorph under the guise of this best friendship appear on the internet in seemingly disconnected ways, where I don't know how this got out, but now there's all this stuff about me on the internet?
It depends on what the operational goals are for that metamorph. Usually they're penetrating, infiltrating to gain information, to report back, or to cause a rift in relationships or organizations.
Are these personality metamorphs also used in the space program, and if so, for what?
In the space program, I did not run into the personality metamorphs. They were used mainly for special access programs down here on Earth, and as I said, they were inserted into just about every walk of life, every part of life, from government to banking, everything.
What is the best way that you could, or anyone could, identify that this is being done to them, and what kind of countermeasures can you take? What's our defense against people that are trained this way?
Well, the best defense is to know that you need to guard your inner information, guard information that could be harmful to you at all costs. If you're in a situation, you've met someone new through a friend or a friend of a friend, and they like the same hard-to-get soft drink that you do, oddly. They happen to like this offbeat band that no one else has ever heard of that you do. And all these little, just little coincidences occur, and y'all become good friends. And you find yourself becoming somewhat addicted to wanting to be around them all the time. And you find yourself wanting to tell them things that you wouldn't normally tell anyone else. Red flag should go up a little bit. And it's only after you have really started to share information and made yourself vulnerable to these people that they then start the actual manipulation of you.
Are personality metamorphs being directed against people who are having spiritual contact with orbs or dreams and visions, synchronicity, and then talking about it on Facebook or on the internet?
Yes, yes, and any other number of targets, including financial people who need to be controlled or managed. A lot of times they'll go in and control or manage people.
What is the greatest weakness that these personality metamorphs have that we could use to defend against them?
Their own hubris. They underestimate everyone. They are convinced they're very intelligent. They're convinced they're the smartest person in the room. They're always convinced they're the smartest person in the room. The people that, if you learn to sit back and keep your ears open and keep your mouth closed, which is hard for a lot of people, you will learn a lot more and you will look around and perceive a lot more. And you might start noticing these people.
Do you think there are always going to be little warning signs that the addictiveness of them being like your best friend causes you to overlook, that if you are really being careful, you'll find these little tells, these little giveaways that something's really wrong?
If you didn't know that a personality metamorph existed, you wouldn't think to, guard against it or to be careful of it.
Right.
It doesn't exist. It's just a person that apparently came into my circle somehow, was psychologically damaged, very intelligent, manipulated me and my friends, split up a business venture or a relationship, and then they disappeared from our lives. And that's how they may think of it, when actually it was an operation.
Well, my opinion is, too, that there's always going to be clues with the sociopath in general. You're always going to have things that don't feel good, but the addictiveness kind of sucks you in.
Yes, and you need to learn to go with that inner voice, that feeling. If something doesn't feel right, usually in the beginning, there's a little bit of something that doesn't quite feel right, but people don't listen to that usually.
All right, well, that's all the time we have on this episode of Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and as always, I thank you for watching. All right, welcome back to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock. We're here with Corey Goode. And in this episode, we're going to get into one of the most sensitive secrets of the cabal, that known as the personality metamorph program. This is an extremely important subject for everyone to understand because, well, I'll let him tell you the rest. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, we know in the public lexicon that there are people out there that, to sociopathic internet trolls, different studies I've seen range between 5 to 8% of all people on the internet are acting this way. Why do you think the internet is such a marvelous breeding ground for trolls and for sociopaths? What is it about it that they like so much?
Well, the illusion of anonymity. It's if very few of these people would behave that way in front of the people they're chastising or attacking. Most of them, just don't have the guts, or are just couldn't deal with the consequences. So they feel empowered by the anonymity of passive. Learn to fake emotions or fake empathy. So some of them are not as easy for the average person to identify. Until you've spent time around them, a lot of them can be hard to identify.
Do you agree with the commonly held notion that these people tend to be glamorous and narcissistic, that they're kind of affable and personable, outgoing, extroverted?
Exactly, yes.
Give us an example of a nonviolent, everyday sociopath that would have those kind of characteristics.
It would be your basic con artist that would get what they want from their mark without using physical violence, using manipulation, but having no empathy or care about what their successful con will do to the people emotionally or financially.
Do you think that society is starting to become more aware that these people exist?
Yeah, well, it's been pretty obvious for some time, but with social media, the internet, the topic is pretty heavy out there. People know about, internet trolls. They know about, sociopaths and what they're doing to this world, usually from places of power.
I think it's interesting that the conventional statistics, in case you don't know watching the show, is that it's 4% of men, 2% of women. But when you get, some people call sociopaths, some people call them psychopaths. There is a myth that a psychopath is violent, but that's not always true, is it?
No.
So what are some of the characteristics of the sociopath that we would see just in everyday life? If you have a sociopath that's part of your life, what are some of the characteristics that that person might display?
Well, usually it's not going to be any shock or mystery to you. A complete lack of empathy for any type of emotional or physical pain that you're going through. That's a major sign. The way they behave towards animals and children is a good indicator. A lot of these people have learned to blend in pretty well. Sociopaths